Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to dive deep into the original Hebrew texts to uncover a centuries-old translation error. And honestly, it's an error that has fundamentally shifted our understanding of the ancient biblical worldview. It's literally been hiding a frankly terrifying cosmic reality right in plain sight. So let's start with a little linguistic detective work. Think about this question for a second. We've all read the familiar biblical warnings about avoiding wizards, mediums, and soothsayers, right? But what if those words didn't mean what we thought they meant? What if they weren't human at all? Answering this completely shatters our preconceived notions about some of the most famous stories in the Bible. All right, let's look at section 1, Lost in Translation, the flattening of the ancient text. To understand how we miss this, we have to look at the history of the texts themselves. For centuries, our English translations have buried a massive theological secret. When we read words like medium or wizard today, we naturally assume the text is talking about human religious professionals, kind of like a fortune teller in a tent. But scholars call this a translational flattening. It basically takes this vast, complex cosmic reality and squashes it down into a simple list of outlawed human careers. Here's the really crucial point. These ancient laws aren't just targeting occult humans. When the original texts speak of the Ob and the Yediani, they are explicitly prohibiting unauthorized contact with disembodied, non-human spirit entities. The law wasn't about avoiding a shady human practitioner. It was about avoiding the actual entity living inside or speaking through that practitioner. You might be wondering, how did we lose this? Well, over time, language naturally shifts. During the Second Temple period, people started using the name of the spirit to refer to the human consulting it. It's a linguistic process called metonymy. By the time Greek and Roman translators created the Septuagint and the Vulgate, they completely changed the meaning to describe human professionals, using words like ventriloquists and conjurers. And just like that, the true cosmic stakes were totally obscured. Which brings us to section 2, Meet the Knowing Ones, decoding the Hebrew words. Let's look at the actual philological evidence. First up, we have the word yedioni. In biblical Hebrew, this word features a grammatical quirk called numinous doubling. It's basically ancient Hebrew's way of putting a word in bold, all caps. It identifies the Yedioni as an emphatically knowledgeable entity from the unseen realm. It is literally the knowing one, a being that possesses supernatural intelligence that living humans simply cannot access on their own. And that perfectly sets up the second term, the Ob. Etymologically, this root means to pass from one side to another. The Ob is, by definition, a boundary crosser. So when the Bible warns against someone with an Ob, the human is just the possessed vessel. The Ob is the actual crossing over spirit that violently breaches cosmic boundaries. Moving on to section 3, Mapping the Underworld, the Geography of the Dead. What's truly fascinating here is that this abstract theology was grounded in real, physical, ancient geography. During the Exodus, the Israelites were physically walking through a landscape of the dead in the Transjordan. Just look at the biblical place names where they camped. Oboth, which means spirits that have crossed over, and Abarim, the ruins of the crossing over ones. They were literally traveling through a geographical margin that ancient people believed was the border to the underworld. And incredibly, archaeology totally backs this up. This very same region is packed with ancient megalithic tombs and dolmens. It was the ancestral domain of the Rephaim, shadowy dead warrior assemblies who, in ancient Near Eastern thought, had already crossed over into the non-human realm. When someone consulted an Ub, they believed they were reaching into this specific, terrifying terrain. Let's dive into section 4, the cosmic rules, realms distinction, and the Eden typology. To fully grasp why contacting these spirits was so severely forbidden, we have to understand the core biblical principle of realm distinction. God created distinct realms for embodied humans and disembodied spiritual beings. The boundary between those realms can only be crossed if Yahweh initiates it. We call that divine revelation. But a human initiating cross-realm contact through divination, that is an illegal assertion of power over a boundary that Yahweh strictly governs. It's breaking the literal rules of the cosmos. And this right here absolutely blew my mind. This dynamic perfectly mirrors the original sin in the garden. In Hebrew, the Nakash, the serpent in Eden, simultaneously translates as one who practices divination. Think about that. A disembodied being crossed the boundary, offered forbidden knowledge, and the humans accepted it. Every single act of mediumship is just humanity structurally repeating the disaster of Eden. This is exactly why Deuteronomy 18 catalogs all these wild ancient practices. We're talking water divination, reading animal organs, tying magical knots, making botanical potions. The law comprehensively condemns any human-initiated system designed to extract divine knowledge through technique. Because fundamentally, it's all just a human attempt to bypass God and force that boundary open. All right, Section 5, the ultimate treason, the Deuteronomy 32 worldview. Contacting these boundary-crossing spirits wasn't just dangerous, it was considered the ultimate covenant treason. This stems from the Deuteronomy 32 worldview, where, following the Tower of Babel, Yahweh disinherited the nations and allotted them to rival governing divine beings. Israel, however, remained under Yahweh's direct jurisdiction. Because those other nations were governed by rival, rebel spirits, an Israelite consulting those entities wasn't doing a parlor trick. They were committing spiritual prostitution and political treason against their true king. We see this terrifying dynamic perfectly displayed in the famous Witch of Endor narrative. When King Saul demands the woman summon the dead prophet Samuel, she uses her Ob spirit to breach the boundary. And when Samuel actually appears, she screams out in absolute terror. I see an Elohim coming up out of the earth. She correctly identifies that a powerful being from the disembodied realm has just crossed over into hers. The crazy part is, Saul actually knew the cosmic rules. He had previously expelled all the mediums from Israel. So why do it? Saul's tragedy illustrates a really profound human truth. When we abandon Yahweh's authorized channels of knowledge, we inevitably seek out unauthorized, treasonous substitutes. His sheer desperation and fear drove him right back into the arms of the underworld. Finally, Section 6, Echoes of the Unseen, Legacy and Spiritual Hygiene. Let's see how this evolved. The ancient prophets like Isaiah actually mocked these knowing spirits. They drew this sharp contrast between the humiliating, barely audible chirping and muttering of the Ob spirits, which, by the way, always needed a human professional just to decode them, and the clear, powerful, public voice of Yahweh. Isaiah basically roasts them, saying, if these spirits are so powerful, why are they whispering from the dirt? And this whole cosmic framework doesn't just disappear in the New Testament. The exact same non-human entities show up, just recategorized. The underworld beings of the Old Testament become the unclean spirits or demons in the Gospels, and those rival territorial gods of the nations, that's exactly what the Apostle Paul is talking about when he warns us about principalities and powers in heavenly places. So what's our ultimate takeaway here? This ancient worldview perfectly explains why the New Testament doesn't teach complex spiritual mapping techniques or elaborate rituals to bind these spirits. The biblical antidote to the unseen realm isn't some new human technique. It's simply covenant fidelity to the one who alone controls the boundary. Stick to the authorized channels, the word, prayer, and community. Deconstructing this single translation error completely changes how we read the text, doesn't it? It transforms a basic list of outlawed careers into a terrifying, awe-inspiring glimpse into a cosmic war over boundaries, knowledge, and loyalty. And it leaves us with a really provocative question to chew on. If we miss the true identity of the knowing ones for centuries, what other profound cosmic truths have we been missing all along?